What is up? So today we are just gonna talk about a really weird metaphor because that's what I do here. Today's topic is, are you a Californian or are you a Carpathia? So what do I mean by this? First off, I do want to say, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about the infamous ship, the Titanic, and it's at the bottom of the ocean. But either which way, we are going to be talking about this metaphorically speaking, because when I look at things, I look at how patterns repeat themselves in history, and I look at what they can potentially mean now. So what do I mean by, are you a Californian or are you a Carpathia? Now, to expand on this, we know the Titanic sank. The Titanic was a sinking ship, and FYI, I'm not poking fun at the tragedy that happened with the Titanic. I am looking at it strictly from a metaphorical point of view. This is me speaking from what I channeled, what is my truth, what I know. If it resonates with you, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Do something else with yourself. The sinking of the Titanic as conveyed to me, and I've seen this, I was watching this movie randomly, I don't know, maybe a month ago on YouTube, and it was about Gianni Versace, and basically someone came in and there was a line said, and it was like, I want off the Titanic, or something like that. And then ever since I saw that, I've been seeing that phrase all over the place, so I guess I was meant to convey a message regarding that. So essentially what's going on now on the third dimensional plane of what one would call Earth is that I'm going to liken this for metaphorical purposes as the Titanic. And I mean that from a collective consciousness energy standpoint. I don't literally mean that the Earth is sinking, although I'm sure some parts are. So 3D plane of Earth right now at this moment in time with the current events going on is likened to the Titanic. We have two other ships, the Californian, the Carpathia. If you're familiar with the story of the Titanic, you will know that the Titanic struck an iceberg in an ice field. I don't know why, if I'm like, this message was supposed to come out now, like why I was guided to speak about it now, because we're coming off on like the anniversary of it as I film this video. It is April 11th. The Titanic went down on April 15th, so maybe that's it. It might be, I don't know, but either which way, we're talking about it. The Titanic was sailing in the North Atlantic and it struck an iceberg. So there was a field of ice. It wasn't just one iceberg. There were numerous icebergs, and the Californian was a ship, which, I mean, this is why I was like, I gotta talk about this shit. Was captained by a man named Stanley Lord. Like, for real? Captain Lord? Okay. You'll see what I mean by this. Anyway, so basically the Californian was stopped for the evening because it too was in the valley of the field of ice in the middle of the North Atlantic. So the Californian was stopped and it saw the ice, and I don't know what they had going on at that in 1912. They had like, they didn't have radar. They had some sort of beep, 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 beep device, right? I don't know what, you know what I'm talking about, right? So basically they knew that the Titanic was near because of that beep, 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 beep. And then so the transmitter of the beep, 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 beep contacted the Titanic in Morse code. Yeah, I don't know if that's the name of the machine, but anyway. So they contacted the Titanic. Remember, this is a Californian with Captain Lord at the helm. And so the Californian essentially is the embodiment of seeing the ice, alerting the Titanic, like, hey, you better slow down, you better slow your roll, like there's some ice coming through, don't know this be good for you, right? So the guy in the beep, 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 beep room basically told the Titanic, he gave a warning, it said ice field, whatever they said, I don't know verbatim, you could look it up if you want, and the Titanic basically rebuffed the warning from the Californian with the crew of Captain Lord. So I'm looking at this metaphorically. I mean, really, Captain Lord Californian sees something because they're from a different perspective, right? They are aware that the Titanic is in the vicinity of the ice field, but the Californian is already stopped. They're like, okay, I see what's going on. I'm going to stop. I'm not going to participate in this ice field, whatever the fuck it is, metaphorically. And I am going to let the Titanic know, because I see it, I'm in a different perspective. Like, I'm already here, you're over there. The Californian is not seeing the ice from the vantage point that the Titanic did not see the ice until it was too late. Keep that in mind. So the Californian warns the Titanic ice field. The Titanic, for whatever reason, I think they were getting bombarded with a lot of beep, 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 beep messages. And so they basically told the Titanic, fuck off, right? In whatever language they said with class in 1912. So they're like, okay, California's like, okay, well, you know, we told you, right? We told you. You said go fuck off. Okay, so they turn in for the evening. Remember, they're stopped because they know the ice field is there and they're not gonna move their ship. So they tell the beep, 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 beep guy, like, okay, call it a night, you could go to sleep. So that's essentially what happens. Now, there has been a lot of contest with that, saying that, you know, the Californian could have done more or whatever. In my opinion, me speaking for me, the Californian did, I mean, what was it gonna do? It said, listen, hey, icebergs, plural, Titanic, hey. Titanic is like, fuck you, or whoever was in the room. I don't know what they said, right? But as far as I'm concerned, from that vantage point, if you see something and you let a motherfucker know and the motherfucker like, fuck you, okay, you on your own now. Like, and not in like, I'm not admonishing that. Like, I don't know what the fuck happened, you know, on the ice field that night. I don't know. But my perspective is the Californian, okay, metaphorically as well as physically, let the Titanic know what was up. The Titanic wasn't having it. Okay, well, you know, we tried to tell them. What else are they going to do, right? You know, nothing had happened at that point. They just tried to tell them. Then, okay, go fuck yourself. Let's shut off the beep, 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 beep machine. Cool. So, Calamity strikes. The tragedy, the Titanic hits an iceberg. All the watertight compartments are breached. Titanic has roughly 2 hours and 30 minutes. So what happens now is that whoever is on board the Titanic, now it's essentially too late to avert the disaster. So now the Titanic, and I'm speaking of collective consciousness on Earth at this point, is basically, whoa, like what just happened? So now it's either, are they going to stay on board a sinking ship, or do they want off the Titanic? But either which way, right, they're either going to perish in the cold water or they're going to go down with the ship. They're going to make that choice, okay? There's also a choice to try to survive, but surviving an event like that is going to likely leave some traumatic impact on that individual. So this is what I'm speaking about. So if you want to look at Earth from a 3D consciousness collective, it's the Titanic. Shit going haywire. Some motherfuckers might have tried to warn others of what's going haywire. Some motherfuckers might be like, fuck you. Okay, so fuck you. Now, are you going down with the sinking ship? Or are you going to try to save yourself? And then you're still going to have some sort of trauma associated with that. Or at the very minimum, there's going to be that memory of you fleeing a sinking ship, perhaps leaving behind your valuables, leaving behind your loved ones, jumping into ice cold water, potentially having a PTSD for the rest of your experience on the third dimensional plane. Like, or it could be, okay, you jumped off the Titanic, it might have caused some trauma, but now you're gonna wake up fully to be like, damn, you know, we should have listened to the Californian when they told us. So either which way, it's either someone's gonna choose to perish, someone might perish involuntarily, even though in my view, someone always chooses their time of death, but that's another story, or they're going to survive and live the rest of their life out in trauma, or they're going to survive and they're going to build themselves up from that trauma, because that trauma has now awakened something something in them. But either which way, those on board the Titanic will not be the same because the iceberg has struck and now the ship is going down. That is how I view the third dimensional physical reality collective consciousness at this time. And there are some who embody the Californian, right? Captain Lord, they see things from a different perspective and they're like, hey, iceberg, there's a fucking ice field in front of you, what are you doing? Do you not see this? Ding, ding, ding. And some people, you know, because everyone has free will, it's their choice. Oh, fuck you, Californian. And then now, what have you? A ship that done broke into and the remnants of what could have been had they only heeded the warning. Then we have the Carpathia. So the Carpathia, again, metaphorically speaking, is the ship that essentially was awarded and praised whilst the Californian was sort of like, you know, people weren't too happy with the way the Californian responded to that. But in my opinion, again, I'm not knocking the Californian. The Californian did what would be the ethical thing to do, try to warn the motherfucker prior to. The Titanic is like, fuck you, okay, you know? So the Carpathia came in after the fact when the Titanic had already sank and it rescued the survivors. So if you're familiar with the story, you will know that more than half of the individuals that were on the ship perished. So that's what happened. And the survivors, I don't know if they had PTSD or if they built themselves up better from after that trauma, or that was their wake-up call to what was really going on, or whatever the case. But either which way, the Carpathia, that type of energy, came into what I am going to call it as pick up the pieces of the wreckage of the Titanic. Because when the Carpathia came in, it was like, the Carpathia did good because it's like, okay, I want to rescue these motherfuckers, right? Like, they're in distress, let me rescue them. But now it's sort of like the Carpathia has to pick up the pieces, and the Carpathia chose to pick up the pieces. Like, no one forced them, right? They're like, man, these people are like, they're in need of some rescue, I'm gonna go swoop in, right? But the point that I'm trying to make with this is that there are really 3 types of individuals on Earth right now, which I am tying to the collective consciousness. You have those currently on board the Titanic, okay? Then we have those on board the Californian. Then we have those on board the Carpathia. So, which one are you? If you're watching a video like this, I'm pretty sure you're not on board the Titanic. Let's just go with that. So the 2 types of individuals that I'm going to be speaking to is, are you on the Californian or are you on the Carpathia? So are you someone who sees the ice field in advance and tries to warn a motherfucker, but they rebuff you? They're like, nah, I'm good, Or are you a Carpathia individual where you're like, but they need rescuing, let me swoop in to save the day, and I'm gonna pick up the pieces of the wreckage? Which one are you? I'm sure if you are a spiritual individual, at times you might have been both. But right now, the most important thing to do is, which is the point of this, which we always meander along the long way to do it, right? We always meander along and then we get to the point, but I explained myself, I explained why. So as a metaphor, you see the collective consciousness of the 3rd dimensional reality essentially crumbling, right? Me personally, I'm gonna stay my ass on the motherfucking Californian, okay? There have been times that I've been a Carpathia, not necessarily now at this juncture in the timeline with where the collective consciousness is, but I have been a Carpathia motherfucker. I'm like, oh no, people need help, this person needs my help, I'm gonna swoop in. And it's like, okay, that's great, but you're still not going to be able to fix them. Sure, you can be there, but you're not going to be able to fix them from the trauma that perhaps the Californian tried to divert them away from. So if you are in the boat right now, which I feel a good amount of people are, I do want to let you know that it's okay to be on the Californian. It's okay to see things from a perspective that perhaps you saw an ice field, you recognized it because of your consciousness level, and you're like, well, okay, I'm not going to proceed further until this ice melts or until I maneuver my way around it, but oh, a motherfucker coming through, let me let him know that there's an ice field. Oh, he said fuck you to me? Okay. You did what you had to do. There is no need, because a lot of Carpathia types might feel guilty if they couldn't step in from the start to protect that person from the start. But what the Carpathia individual needs to realize for their own evolution is that sometimes, like let's say the individuals that chose to stay on board the Titanic and they want to swim for it or whatever, like they made their own decision. They were going through this tragedy and they wanted to get in a lifeboat, they wanted to put on a life vest, and they either want to make the most of it or they chose to allow themselves to wallow in the tragedy, right? That's still their choice. All the Carpathia person can do is help them if they are in a dire distress to the best way that the Carpathia knows how to do. But the Carpathia individual cannot perform the healing from the trauma or the PTSD that the Titanic individual has suffered going through that experience. That is something that the Carpathia individual needs to realize. So if you are a Carpathia individual and you want to be there to pick up the pieces, let's say with the collective consciousness that we're going on right now, that someone becomes traumatized because of whatever that happened in their third dimensional experience at this time, right? They are responsible for their own healing. The Carpathia individual is not. So the Carpathia individual, which is whom I'm speaking to, needs to understand that they might see this distress signal coming from the individual that was on the Titanic. And sure, they made it off of the Titanic, but what type of PTSD do they have, and how much of that is the Carpathia individual's responsibility? That's the key, because the Californian individual, which I feel many that I'm speaking to are, it's like Captain Lord, need I say that, right? Like, we know that everyone is God. God is in everyone and everything, right? So it's like, whoa, like, I see that. I tried to warn you, right? As someone who is seeing something from a different perspective, but you didn't want to listen to me. I have the understanding to know that you need to be on that Titanic right now for you. So the Californian individual as well needn't feel bad if someone on board the Titanic of the collective consciousness didn't listen to them, because for whatever reason, remember, free will, they have the choice to stay on board the Titanic. And as we're speaking metaphorically here, okay, because when that thing was really going on, I mean, there were no helicopters at that time to like carry people out and swoop them up before that happened. Like, I'm speaking metaphorically, but this example just came to me. I don't know why. So either which way, some people on the Titanic, they chose to just pass away that night, go down with the ship, and that's okay too. That's their decision, because they all have free will. But when I'm speaking to the Californians, I'm saying if you were in that situation where you saw what was going on collectively and you tried to warn a motherfucker and they didn't listen, do not feel guilty if you witnessed them going down on the sinking ship. Do not. You did your part. That is all. You understand from your higher perspective that they must go through that. To the Carpathia individuals, you have to understand that you are not going to be able to swoop in and fix a motherfucker. They must do that all on their own. So you can be there, but do not feel guilty if someone who was on board the Titanic or experienced some trauma from being on board the Titanic comes to you and expects you to immediately heal them and immediately fix them. You can be their guide, but you are not going to heal them unless they ascertain to themselves that they want that healing. Because remember, with that trauma of being on the Titanic, someone can carry PTSD with them for a while, or someone can can acknowledge that, sure, there might be an instance for a not so great memory from being on board the Titanic, but what did they learn from that experience? And that is what I'm letting the Carpathia individuals know, that if you go in and try to rescue someone, that's on you. You have free will too, after the fact. I'm talking after the fact. But if you see that they are just stuck in their own ego-based illusion of what they perceive that Titanic tragedy to be, you're not going to be able to pull them out. You're not going to be able to do that. So don't feel guilty if you have to step away from someone that you feel you can rescue. For the Californian individuals, do not feel guilty because your captain warned a motherfucker and ain't nobody listened to you. So it's like, okay, you understand. All right, well, that's the path that they chose. So I'm a standby. I don't want to, mess with something that they want to experience. So this went all over the place, but that's the best way that I can really describe it. Like, the collective consciousness right now is, I'm viewing the third dimensional plane. People's realities are fucking sinking. Titanic, I mean, some people already jumped off. They jumped ship. They're like, I don't want to be here. I'm gonna go this side, that side, however they go. There are motherfuckers that saw that shit coming. Were like, hey, red flag, and fuck you. Okay. And then there are other motherfuckers that are going to be there because they choose to be there when someone experiences a downfall in their collective consciousness, things that they thought they knew, their ego dissolving. And now everything that individual thought they knew, this ship is unsinkable. Really? Okay. The Carpathia individual is to realize when to walk away from someone who chooses to stay stuck in their trauma, or to choose to be there to help illuminate that individual into stepping out of that trauma and taking positives from that to advance their own spiritual evolution. That's what I got for you today with my, my weekly metaphor. And I am Oculus, the alien next door. We will chit chat again soon.